Final hour OverDrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Frankie Corrado, TSN 1050 on your home smart speaker, up on the TSN app as well. Our buddy Marcellus Wiley will join us here in a moment. Get his take on camp news throughout the NFL. He's an LA guy, big Clipper fan. What he makes of James Harden. The news Harden's been making all week. Jays are off today, back in action tomorrow in Cincinnati. The NBA sked out today as well. We were talking about it earlier. And it's funny, you were talking about this on the break, just kind of looking at when different big-name players are rolling through town. And the nature of the NBA in 2023 is you need to know if that team plays the night before.
Yeah.
Because if they do, there's a very good chance that guy's just not going to play. And that is so terrible for the fan base, for ticket holders. Like you mentioned, especially guys in the West who you don't see all the time. Like Luka gets here once.
Steph's coming once.
Steph gets here once. Jokic and Murray, they're going to come once. LeBron gets here once.
Yeah.
And if they play the night before, there's a very good chance they're not going to play the next night.
So LeBron, his game in Toronto is going to be the first half of a back-to-back. The second half is going to be in Washington.
So he probably plays here.
You would think. Then Curry, it's the second half of a back-to-back.
Probably won't play.
And Jokic or Luka, I can't remember.
I think it was Luka.
It was Luka. Luka's the second half of a back-to-back.
Yeah.
So
now,
you can basically look at that and say, probably not.
Maybe not. Luka's still young enough.
Yeah.
And Dallas is not like an elite team that you would think Luka might feel like he needs to play. Also, the NBA's implemented these new rules in terms of making it all NBA. You got to play a certain amount of games.
Right. And I think maybe with Steph, there's a little sentimental value of playing in Toronto. So he might suck it up and play the second half of a back-to-back. Although I don't know, like, does he do the whole load management thing? Does he sit out on back-to-back?
He's not historically.
Yeah. He's not known for that.
He's not a poster boy of it, but Steve Kerr and the Warriors have done it a lot over the years where Kerr has just made the decision, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Like I'm taking it out of your hands and I'm telling the world that it was my decision you're not playing.
And with the pricing, the way the tickets are, like
those are premium seats
Golden
if the Warriors are here.
Yeah, it's like the prices are going to be higher, and they can't take into account that he might not play. Like Golden State's in town, so you're going to pay a premium.
Yeah, it obviously that will never happen. But in a just world, it might be a part of the programming where if a guy is out because he's hurt, that I think comes with the gamble of buying a sports ticket.
Yep.
You can't guarantee your team's going to win. You can't guarantee every player's going to be healthy. But if it's a pure load management shoot deployment, there should be some sort of restitution.
Give me a bobblehead. Give me a T-shirt. I need something to go away from this game feeling good about myself.
Like if Steph is not going to play that night, he should be the halftime show. He should go and jack threes at half, and we should be able to watch him like a rodeo clown. And he needs to entertain us.
Yeah.
That should be what happens.
That's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah.
Do something for
I think
us.
that makes sense.
Put on some cool music and bring out do the 3-point competition.
Yeah.
Do a little practice for that for the All-Star game.
I just did your job, Adam Silver. It's all over. It's all good.
It's cutting edge, it's revolutionary, and you heard it here first on OverDrive.
Yeah. You can forget about your concerns about load management. Have as much of it as you want, but the guy has got to be the halftime show.
Yeah, I think it's smart business, really, is what it is. And then that opens up, the avenue for maybe a little betting. Hey, like how many threes will Steph Curry make at halftime? What's the over-under?
Now we're talking. FanDuel, they could put a line on that.
Right?
FanDuel could tell us exactly. Let's say that would actually be a great exhibition. Basically the 3-point competition at the All-Star game in some capacity.
Yeah.
Steph's going to shoot 15 shots. The total is, 11 and a half over-under. That might be low
now,
for Steph.
I was going to say
no defense or anything.
12 and a half just going around the key.
Yeah, that's a great question. Like if you were giving him 15 shots scattered around the 3-point line.
Yeah.
Is he hitting more or less than 12 and a half?
I'm sure he could hit more than 12 and a half.
Go 15 for 15 in his sleep.
But he's getting off the bench, right? He's been sitting there for the first half.
So no warm-up, but no one defending him.
Yeah. He gets to choose the music that's playing.
I'm betting the over. I think I'd need 13.5 to bet the under. How insane is that?
That is nuts.
That's the kind of number we're talking about with Steph, where if he had 15 shots, including multiple shots from the corner, I think for me to take the under, it would have to be like 13.5. Because I think if it's anything less than that, you're sweating it, man. You know he's hitting like the first 5 in a row.
Yeah.
Like you just know
if you take the under on 12.5, he might just cruise right past that. He's going to miss one.
Easily. You go 13 for 13 and then throw up bricks.
You talk about fan engagement, though. Like people go to the bathroom, go grab something to drink, grab something to eat during halftime. I'm sitting there.
Absolutely.
I'm watching Steph, and I want to see him. Yeah, I want to see him hit the over.
Yeah. I think the ratings would go up, man. Like, honestly, the TV companies would be like, we got to go live to Steph Curry shooting threes.
We might have something here. Like the
I
nights
think there's no question we have
the nights that Kawhi doesn't play for the Clippers.
Yeah,
get Kawhi involved, right? Because Kawhi misses a lot of games for load management. It's understandable. But
it's probably a little bit excessive. Like at some point, come on, Kawhi. We love you, dude, but play.
Well, let's ask a Clippers fan about it.
Okay, let's bring him in here. Former NFL All-Pro, author, founder of the Project Transition Foundation, Clippers superfan. What's happening, Marcellus?
I feel slander in the air coming from my Toronto brethren. What are we talking about here?
Well, you know what we're talking about is the nature of the NBA and how much it sucks that, like, the schedule was released today, and we're talking about, when superstars roll through town, the nature of the NBA in 2023 is you got to look at the schedule, because if they play the night before, there's a good chance they're just not going to play, right? Like, that's the way the NBA operates now. It's like, using the Clippers as an example, assuming Kawhi's healthy. If the Clippers played the night before, he's probably not playing the next night. And it sucks, but that's kind of just the reality and where we are in the NBA.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Let me give you another layer to it, because I know this for fact, and it doesn't get properly advertised for good reason. These NBA stars, when they check out the schedule, them and their team, they huddle up, and then their camp discusses with the organization which games they're going to play and not play. So I've heard it as simple as they get the 82-game schedule, and then they go to the organization and they say, which 60 do you want? And it's just that simple. Like, 22 of those, just cut them out. You figure it out. And why doesn't that get out, and why isn't that properly advertised? Because they don't want the fans to know that the players and the organizations are kind of in on the gag. It's like there's no way that anyone is raising their hand to play 82 games anymore. And these guys, you call it load management, call it what you want. But remember when Adam Silver came out, I think this was earlier this year, and he said, yeah, we need to look at load management in a different way. What he was really saying is there's no way I can convince these guys anymore to give me 82 games literally or even hypothetically. So they're trying their best to advertise to us fans that you got a chance to see a star when he comes into town or when you go to home games. But the reality is they know that these guys are going to be missing, and they just don't want everyone else to know that they're in on the act.
So what do you think of the idea that if you're a star player and you go somewhere on the road, like, for example, Steph's coming here to Toronto, it's the second half of a back-to-back, he's got to be the halftime show entertainment. He's got to get out there and he's got to launch threes, and there's going to be an over-under on it. There's going to be fan engagement, but that's the way, because ticket prices are higher when Golden State comes to town because you're expecting to see Steph Curry. So that's how you see him when he comes to town. What do you think? I'm joking mostly.
I don't like that. I don't like the guy. Look, it's like a kid who misses school. And you know what it is. When the kids miss school and it's not like a real issue, as soon as you leave, as soon as like their sister and brother goes to school, they miraculously are healthy at like 8:30 in the morning. You're like, dude, you could have went to school. All of a sudden they got cartoons on. They got extra breakfast. They're healthy. It's the same thing if you take off a day from work. Would you want your boss to say, hey, but during lunchtime, show up and make sure that everybody knows that you still are involved with the company? You're like, what the hell? I'm taking the day off. So I know it wouldn't fly, but you want some contribution from the stars. But I'm the fan that understands that when I go to the games, there's a shared experience between who's going to win, who's going to lose. Then there's the experience of, okay, are my favorite players going to play? And then there's the experience of, hey, I'm just at a cool-ass event with 20,000 at a basketball game or 80,000 at a football game. And what's happening on the field, they got another one next week or they got another one tomorrow. And I kind of like just buy into the whole event rather than, oh, my God, my starting five, what happened to it? So we're evolving, I think, as a fan culture. And we just got to realize these guys are not giving us 82. So what you going to do, beat your head on the wall?
With Marcellus Wiley. So, again, as a Clipper fan, I think the whole world's kind of paying attention to what James Harden's all about right now. And James, an L.A. guy, wants to be a Clipper. And he's going back to the James Harden playbook, man. It's been very successful for him, right? Sabotage Houston, get to Brooklyn. Sabotage Brooklyn, get to Philly. And now he's putting forth a plan of sabotaging the Philadelphia 76ers. As a pro athlete yourself, do you have any respect for this? Are you cool with the way Harden represents himself? Where do you stand on his whole operation?
You know, it's interesting you ask. Great question, because sometimes you have a deep respect for someone doing something that you would never do. And that's how I feel about this. Like, I'm like, good for him for being a gangster. Like, somebody got to just stand up and have that concrete spine. And it's not me. I'm not the one to just, like, upset the apple cart to that point. I always find a way. I'll figure out a way to make both situations work together. But that's just me. Maybe the peacemaker in me. But I would sit back if I were his teammate and have a part of my body and my mind saying, woo, this boy don't give a damn. And I like it. And, you know, people like that do pave the way for the freedom for the players or the player empowerment, which is a part of the game. But at this time, it's interesting. I'm more sympathetic for him this time than I am the previous two times, because this time, after we saw Embiid get hurt or Harden go in there and play well, you truly realize Harden is not being played properly, and he's in the wrong situation, right? He is a square peg, and then it's a round circle hole. It's like, man, he needs to get away from Embiid, because all they're going to do is gravitate towards Embiid because he's their best player. And then James Harden's going to have 10 points, 20 points, lead the league in assists. And then when Embiid gets hurt, he's going to be like the most dominant player in the whole league. You're like, what is going on? Why can't they play complementary basketball? So for that reason, I would like to see James Harden go elsewhere. Can't lie, though. I do not want to see him come to my Clippers.
Fair enough. You're talking about James Harden being a gangster. Why don't we talk about another player on the field who plays like a gangster, and that's Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know, everyone's been talking about the series quarterback, where you get an up-close look at him and what his training regimen is like, what his mindset is like. And, you look at the AFC this year, there's going to be a lot of good teams. There's a lot of good quarterbacks. If someone is telling you they'll give you the Kansas City Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl or the field, who are you taking there?
Yeah, I'm taking the field. Look, they've been to 2 of the last 4. They won 2 of the last 4. We know that they got spanked in 1. Here's the thing. That AFC is just getting cluttered at the top in terms of just potential. Yeah, Kansas City has come out on top more than others, but Buffalo, Cincinnati, L.A. is coming somewhere, somehow, some way. If you just look at the AFC alone, who knows what could happen with a talented roster in New York and then Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, how much that could be instant oatmeal. And it's just like you look at the AFC, it's just a lot of good teams. Will Tennessee rebound? They're always steady, Eddie. So it's like there's just so much going on. And I swear that Kansas City seems like one Travis Kelce injury away from being just a normal team. And that's not to take away from their greatness, take away from Mahomes. But that all works because Mahomes is the great quarterback. He is the best in the league. But, boy, Kelce is a bailout plan that we haven't seen since the pandemic. And I'm like, come on. If something happens to Kelce, what happens to this team? And that's what's interesting. I think that they're still great. They're still one of the best, but they're doing a high high wire act right now that sooner or later they're going to need that net and they're going to fall down.
Well, it's funny you look at Kelsey and that would be an internal, issue that they'd have to overcome, where I think most people around football are looking externally and the other quarterbacks simply in the AFC. And as great as Mahomes is, like this guy's got Burrow and Rodgers and Herbert and Lawrence and Lamar. Like he's got a lot of guys chasing him, man. Like there's just a lot of like great quarterback play. And he set the standard. The guy is a stud. He's the unanimous number one player in the league. But like he takes his foot off the gas, Mahomes, in any capacity. There's a lot of guys waiting behind him looking to blow past him. I didn't even mention Josh Allen. Allen's another one of that crew.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe to me, the second one, even though Burrow obviously had the team success and made it to a Super Bowl, but Josh Allen to me would be the next quarterback I would draft right behind Patrick Mahomes. Oh, closely with Justin Herbert, even over a Joe Burrow, but I digress. Let's say this. We saw this with Patrick Mahomes. When was it? A couple of years ago, started off a little off the fastball for Patrick Mahomes, and everyone was talking about his mechanics and his issues, and he was just playing reckless ball. He went back to the days of playing at Texas Tech where he was just out there gunslinging, and then he found his way. Here's the one thing that they have going for them over everyone else is that they solved those complex problems when presented, where every other team is now trying to solve those problems. What does that mean? It's late in the game. You need a play. Everyone on this field can make a play, but who believes they're going to make that play? And that's the one edge they have over everyone else is because of that consistency, because of them having that pedigree and that championship resolve. They've answered that question so many times, it's second nature. We saw it in L.A. when they went to play Jacksonville. They couldn't figure out a second half. They couldn't just turn the Rubik's Cube a little more to get it right. And then we saw Jacksonville advance and couldn't do the same thing. Then you saw Cincinnati. Like, everyone gets to that moment of truth where we all can do it, but who's going to do it? And no one else has answered that just yet like Kansas City has.
More likely to have a better season, the Jets or the Broncos?
The Jets. Oh, man. I can't lie, though. I am such a humanitarian. I am rooting for Russell Wilson to shut everyone up, including me. Because, boy, you're talking about what he had, a 9-year amazing Hall of Fame career. He has one bad year, and, boy, the sky has fallen on Russell and his brand.
It's also the way he does it, though, right? Like he's got the workout videos on the plane. He's like, Broncos country, let's ride. Like it's corny. Everything that comes with it. I don't think it's just the play. It's the way he kind of presents himself that makes it like that.
Oh, absolutely. He's the nicest, most unlikable guy you've ever seen. He's so corny, it's fraudulent. You're like, and don't lie, I met him his rookie year, and I remember talking to him and meeting him, and I'm pretty blunt. Like, people, in a nice way, I do it with a smile, but I was like, dog, tell me how you feel. Because he just was talking in like cliches and paraphrases and just like, pull the string out the mannequin, let it go back in and say exactly what you're expecting. I was like, dude, talk. But then I was like, maybe that's just him. And then I come to realize that is just him. And not a lot of people like it. And it's just the way it's going to be. As long as Sierra likes it and as long as his receivers like him this year more than they did last year, he'll be okay. But that's a tough personality to swallow, man. It just sounds like every cliche in the book, always on carousel, always on repeat. But that's Russ. I can't lie. He is being himself.
Well, who do you think has more power in terms of the eyes of ownership in Denver? Is it Russ and that massive contract they gave him, or Sean Payton?
Oh, Payton gonna outlast Russ. If they both do bad, Payton will outlast them. If they both do well, Payton still will outlast them because he doesn't have to play and get hurt. So yeah. It's Payton's team, brother. They you bet on the coach. Like, you look, Tom Brady even proved that. Belichick's amazing. Brady's amazing. One of them getting old, one of them getting slower, one of them losing it, whatever. We bet on the coach. Like, you just got to do it in football, man, because no matter how great you are as a player, you got a shelf life that is much shorter than a coach. So it's Payton's team, and Russ better get it right quick because Peyton has one silver bullet he can use, and it can kill Russell if Russell gives him the right ammunition to do it. And Russell better start fast and finish strong, because if he starts slow, Peyton's going to be looking sideways at him, and it's all going to crash right down on him real fast.
He is Marcellus Wiley, former NFL All-Pro, author, founder of the Project Transition Foundation. Love having you on, buddy. We'll do it again real soon. Thank you for this.
All right, guys. Take care, brother. Talk soon.
You got it, Marcellus Wiley. And, Peyton, Russ, they're in the AFC. That's the thing. If you could pick them up and put them in the NFC, I think you could sell yourself on Denver having a resurgence and figuring it back out. But they're just in the wrong conference.
In the wrong division.
Yes. Because even Vegas, who I don't have a ton of faith in, but if Garoppolo can be healthy, he can be okay. They've got some talent there. You know, McDaniel's been there for a couple of years. The belief is he's trying to build this New England West type of atmosphere. Yeah.
I'll believe it.
They
when
lost
I
a
see
lot
it.
of close games last year.
Yes.
Like that can be something that you can look at times to project what could happen in the future. Like which team lost in the final 2 minutes, how many teams lost, single possession games, and the Raiders were on the wrong side of a lot of that.
Yeah.
But
they're in a tough division with like quarterback heavy teams, right? Like Herbert, Mahomes, Russell Wilson. I don't think he'd be satisfied with the year he had last year. He was awful. He was a laughingstock. And as much as he's like this robot, kind of like nice, unlikable guy, as Marcellus puts it, like there's got to be something in that brain of his that says like, I'm not going through that again. Like I'm much better than that.
And Peyton will help him in doing that. Like Peyton's a great, great coach. So, you just have one more addition to the conference. Aaron Rodgers came over. Sean Payton came over. It's just like the AFC is a completely different beast. In the NFC, it's expected to be Philly, the Niners, although apparently Brock Purdy's throwing picks like it's a bodily function.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Like they're saying he's throwing picks that are at a ridiculous clip.
And like Shanahan already came out and said, like, this is the guy.
Well, he has to be because Trey Lance can't do it.
Yeah.
And Sam Darnold's there, but Darnold is what he is. Like it's not going to happen. He's not going to make it. So it's Purdy by default, which is amazing that the guy who was picked dead last gets the default position over the guy that they took third overall.
And they're just going to hope they can run the ball right down your throat. They're going to be excellent defensively and just hope to God that the throws that this guy does make when he's called upon, he's not throwing
Don't get
picks.
picked.
Yeah.
That's it. Like it's a very simple game plan if you're Shanahan to Purdy. Like you're going to throw the ball 20 times, 25 times. Don't turn it over.
Yeah, just don't mess up that much.
Don't mess up. Hit Kittle when you have to. Hit Deebo Samuel when you have to. Brandon Ayuk when you have to.
It's actually a
and
dream
get the hell off the
situation
field.
for a quarterback. It
Yes,
really is.
That's what, and to his credit,
Dream
Purdy, before
situation.
getting hurt, did it.
Yeah.
He's undefeated. He looked good. He's mobile. He can move around the pocket. He can run for yardage. But if he's throwing picks, you can't do anything about that. If
No.
you're constantly turning the ball over, you're in big trouble.
Yeah. Oh, run the ball, man. Like Luke Wilson, like your partner likes to say,
Yes.
jam the ball down their throats.
Yep. That can go a long way. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
All right. The NHL season still about a month and a half away. But we figured we'd take ourselves down an avenue of drafting. We haven't done a good draft on this team for quite some time, or a draft on this show for a while. Looking at the teams facing pressure this season, whether it's cut pressure, make the playoff pressure, don't be a gong show pressure. Like there's a lot of different interpretations.
Like, can we do like most likely to have to blow it up this year after a bad year?
Yeah,
something like that.
We're gonna. I'll break down the details of how we're gonna do this,
Okay.
and you and I are gonna go back and forth.
All right.
At least a 3-pack, possibly 5 rounds.
Okay.
Back and forth. Which teams are going to be on the top of our list in terms of pressure that they're going to be dealing with, and there are different types of pressure. So we'll get to that more still to come. FanDuel Best Bets as well. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, our Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. NHL camps opening up in a few weeks. We were talking about Connor Bedard last hour. I think there's some pressure on Bedard to have a quality first impression in the NHL, right? With all this hype, he went first overall. They've handed the keys to him in Chicago. Taves is gone. Kane's gone. It's his show. But that's on an individual basis and possibly some pressure on Chicago as well to try to turn things around quickly because you have Bedard.
Yeah.
So we figured we'd do a draft. We'll just go back and forth. You can have first pick because I'm a nice guy. I'm very diplomatic.
You are a nice guy.
I try to be, Frankie.
You're a nice guy.
And we're calling this the pressure draft. Now, there are different definitions of pressure, different levels of pressure. So we're going to go team by team here. I think we'll start with 3 rounds. Maybe we can get upwards of 5. We'll see.
Okay.
But a 3-round draft, picking teams that meet your pressure level.
Okay.
And whoever you choose, you have to define the type of pressure they're facing.
All right.
All right. So you have the first overall pick in the pressure draft.
I'll take the pick, and that team's not on the board anymore.
They're gone. Once
Okay.
you take a team, that team is no longer available to be drafted.
All right. I'm going to start in Canada. I'm going to go out west. I'm going to pick the Edmonton Oilers first overall.
Yep.
I just think with McDavid and Draisaitl there under contract, it is imperative that they get to a Stanley Cup final. They have to get there, and whatever happens from there, that'll be, up to them. But they got to get past the conference final. They got to be playing for a Stanley Cup. These guys, at some point, they're way too good not to. If their legacy is going to be that of some of the greats of all time, the Stanley Cup needs to go with that. They can't just be 150-point regular seasons in the playoffs every year. Like, they need to get to a Stanley Cup final and see what happens there.
Yep, I agree with your interpretation of their pressure. I think that's a sound first overall pick. You have McDavid and Draisaitl and a really deep team and a team that was very good last year. You're expected to compete for a cup, and at some point you got to win one. At some point it's got to happen. I will take the Pittsburgh Penguins with my first pick, and the pressure is for them to prove that their window has not closed. They missed the playoffs a year ago. They bring in Dubas, and Dubas has gone buck wild down there in terms of trying to turn things over.
Yep.
He spent a lot of money on July 1st, and he made the biggest trade of the NHL calendar season, that being Erik Karlsson. He brings in Karlsson, who just won the Norris, had over 100 points. Sid played 82 games last year. Gino played 82 games last year. Those guys have a reputation of being cup competitive. I don't believe the pressure's on them to win a Stanley Cup. I think internally they'd like to believe it's possible. I'm not convinced it is, but I think there's a ton of pressure for Pittsburgh to prove that last year was simply a blip, and they're absolutely a playoff team.
Yep.
And a team that can be possibly scary come playoff time.
That team, you just don't want to play them because there's that fear factor.
Yes.
I don't sit in the playoffs, or Gino turns back the clock in the playoffs. You just don't want them to get hot. Like Jari,
They gave him a lot of money.
Yeah.
They gave him a lot of term, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you got Mike Sullivan, who's a great coach.
Yep.
But, they're 6-7 years removed from those back-to-back cups now.
Yep.
So I will take Pittsburgh with my first pick. Go ahead. You're back on the board.
That's a good pick. There's an obvious one here. There really is. I might stay away from the obvious one, and I might go down south.
Okay.
And the market would not indicate this because they don't live in a hockey-crazy market. But if you look at where this team has been, what they've done, and where they've kind of fizzled out in the playoffs, I'm talking about the Carolina Hurricanes. And I'm talking about Stanley Cup pressure. I really am. Because every year they're there. Every year they go to the dance. But and they have this thing about playing for Rod and the way they kind of conduct themselves. At some point, though, they're going to have to break through. Like, they're going to have to play for a Stanley Cup just like the Oilers are, just because of what they've built. And it can all go to waste. It really can. So they're in their window right now, and they have a lot of players locked up. They have a lot of very good players. They need to get past the conference final. They need to be playing for a Stanley Cup. The Carolina Hurricanes. It may be not the obvious choice, but there's
an
pressure
inside baseball pressure. You're right, because, not a hotbed hockey market. Obviously a smaller market. They're not going to spend to the cap necessarily. But within the hockey world, the expectations have been high in Carolina for a long time.
Every year we say Carolina, great team, right?
Yep.
They can't put it together and win.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump into that pool of high expectation. It's here for me. I'll do it. I'll take the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs, the pressure is very simple. I don't have to explain it to you or anyone else in this city. But I will put a different spin on it as well. You have the pressure of the Matthews contract hanging over you. What are you going to do with William Nylander? You've got a new GM who's brought in some new pieces. What does Brad Treliving deal do leading up to the trade deadline? where his predecessor was very active. And I thought he had a great trade deadline last year. I thought Dubas did a very good job at the trade deadline. This team needs to win multiple rounds. Quite frankly, they should be in the Stanley Cup pressure list. That's where they should be.
Yeah.
They're good enough. They finished with a ton of points. They have a ton of talent. They have fallen flat on their face for far too long. I know what they did in the first round. And credit to them. They got that done. They got their 4 wins in the first round. The second round, we know what happened. It was so deflating that, in a way, it took away from what they had done in the first round. They have got to make noise. They're in the biggest hockey market in the world. They're risking some apathy seeping in that it's been too long with the same pieces and the same story.
You could say it's here.
It is here for a number of fans.
Yes.
It absolutely is. I've been taken aback by the amount of fans that are like, whatever, I don't care. Like, I don't care what Matthews does. I don't care what Nylander does.
Yeah.
There was a time not long ago where it was 100% unanimously positive around those guys. Now, the fact that there are guys, not saying that people hate on the players, but they're apathetic to what's happening with their contractual situation, that's pressure. Toronto's got to change it. I will take the Leafs with my second pick.
Okay.
Who do you have with your third pick?
I will be going to the nation's capital, not the United States nation's capital, but our nation's capital.
I was looking at these guys.
In Ottawa. Pressure to make the playoffs. It seems like every year the narrative is we're ready to take that step. We're ready to make the playoffs. Well, guess what? You have a great young core of players with a very high ceiling. You've addressed issues. Like, you went out and got Jacob Chychrun to shore up your blue line. Jake Sanderson is a stud already, and he's only going to get better. Korpisalo has to be good early on in the season. They have to get off to a good start. Mm-hmm. Ottawa, the pressure is to make the playoffs, and if they don't make the playoffs, you're not going to change much of that core because they're really good, they're young, they're promising players, and I love DJ Smith. I enjoyed playing for him. But ultimately, like, that's the guy that's in, like, he has a lot of pressure on him, DJ, and the players love playing for him. Like, I can't tell you how many guys would tell you, I love playing for DJ Smith. So it's just one of those things where everything needs to come together for that team this year. And they're young, but, you know, like Babs used to say, you know, you're adults and this and that, you got to be, like, that's what's coming for these guys. They got to be making the playoffs, and they got to carry themselves like men.
Yeah, and young gets old very quickly when that's all you hear. We're young, leave us alone. That's an excuse after a while. It doesn't become an actual explanation. It becomes an excuse, and you got the new owner coming too. Right? And Michael Andlauer, he's going to get the team, I believe, in the next month or so, month and a half. So you got new eyes, new ownership, new buzz in the marketplace. The incumbent GM, coach, players, staff, they got to prove who they are.
Two things.
They have to prove it in Ottawa.
Got to get a save. Got to get off to a good start.
Mandatory
for them.
Mandatory. You got to have a very good October, November, and Korpisalo's got to be the answer.
Yeah.
He has to be. All right, you've taken Ottawa with your third pick. We're doing the pressure draft. Different variations, different reasons for pressure in terms of NHL teams as we look ahead to the 23-24 season. I am going to take, with my third pick, and this may be surprising, I'm going to take the Boston Bruins. And I think there's pressure on Boston to prove that they're not going to fall off a cliff, that this was not the Patrice Bergeron show. And without Bergeron in the room, without Krejci in the room, and those two stalwarts up the middle of the ice, that the house of cards is not going to fall. You still have Brad Marchand. You still have David Pastrnak. You still have Charlie McAvoy. You've still got Lindholm back there. You've got a really, really good defense core, studs up front on the wings, and a goaltending tandem that should be pretty good. You got the reigning Jack Adams winner and Jim Montgomery behind the bench. But you finished with 65 wins and 135 points. The whole world is waiting for you to implode. The whole world is waiting for you to take the biggest step back maybe in NHL history. Because if you drop back to 90 points, that's still a decent year. You probably miss at 90, but that's a 45-point drop over what you did last year. Boston is always in it to win it. They are a very well-run organization. I think there's pressure there. I'm not talking cup. I'm not talking anything about that. I'm talking about the reputation that they put forth a year ago. That losing Bergeron, losing Krejci, losing Orlov, losing Bertuzzi, moving on from Hall, that the house of cards are not going to fall. And I think there is pressure on the big boys there, specifically Marchand, Pastrnak, who's getting paid now, McAvoy, who's getting paid. the goalies to prove last year was not, especially Linus Ullmark.
Oh, yeah.
Prove you're the real deal.
Yeah. Listen,
and I think there's pressure in Boston.
If they drop 40 points, that's 95. They're still in the hunt there.
They're probably in at 95, but that's close.
It's close.
It's real close.
And
that's a 40-point drop.
You want to do a couple more picks?
I got more.
All right.
I got more in the tank. Go ahead.
So the Boston one, them at 95 points, is what brings me to our next pick.
Okay.
So now I'm debating between two world-class cities.
Okay.
Manhattan, Buffalo, New York. And
the prides of the state of New York.
The prides of the state of New York.
Yes.
And I'm going to go with the New York Rangers, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
New Jersey, excellent team.
Yes.
Carolina would be my pick to win the President's Trophy this year. Now, when I'm looking at the Metro, the Islanders, they are what they are. They're going to be around there.
They'll be hanging around.
Pittsburgh Penguins, as we talked about, a lot of pressure.
Should be better.
Kyle Dubas has made a lot of moves there to keep that team competitive. And the Buffalo Sabres are going to be sniffing around. So for the New York Rangers, there's pressure. They're coming for you because you finished third in the Metro last year. There's some teams sniffing on you. And guess what? If Ottawa's sniffing around the playoffs, if Florida's sniffing around the playoffs, that could tie up a couple wild card spots as well. So for the New York Rangers, like a lot of teams around you got better. There is pressure to keep up with those teams.
I agree because I like Carolina. I like Jersey to be playoff teams. I like them to be 2 of the 3 spots out of the Metro. So if that is the case, then the Rangers are fighting for that 3rd spot, or you get into the wild card, which is where Pittsburgh comes into play, like you mentioned. Ottawa comes into play. Buffalo comes into play. Possibly the Islanders. Columbus is better within the division this year. I don't think they're good enough, but they should be better. I agree with you, especially the nature of the market, too. In New York, like you got to be good, especially if you're the hockey team.
Yeah.
Like you are the hockey team of record in the city of New York, in the greater New York area. But the other teams around you, pretty good teams. All right, this may surprise you, but I'm going to take the Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh,
even though they just won a Stanley Cup. Their owner, Bill Foley, has put forth a mission statement since the first time he bought that team. They are obsessed with winning. They are never satisfied with anything but the pursuit of the Stanley Cup, to the point where at times it got a little bit ridiculous, but it paid off in spades this year. It paid off with them finally winning a Stanley Cup. I think Bill Foley probably tells his management staff, if you think there's a cup hangover coming, watch yourself.
Right.
Bill Foley will fire someone 10 games into the season post-Cup because that's how he rolls.
Yeah.
He will get out of his helicopter and walk into T-Mobile and start firing people if they're 4-6 to start the year. So Vegas has put forth this reputation that they have earned, that they are obsessed with winning. Do you get complacent after you finally do it? I think there's pressure on Vegas to prove that their reputation was not about only doing it once. It is a consistent mission statement that they are going to be committed to every single year. And if you're committed to it every single year, then you have to be even after you've just won a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Vegas Golden Knights Pressure Draft.
I like it. That's knowing the clientele as well. Like knowing the personnel behind it. You know Bill Foley very well. Mm-hmm. That's your guy. My last pick, he's not my guy. I can't stand him, but he is now the head coach in Columbus.
The Columbus Blue Jackets.
And there is some pressure there because I'll put it to you this way. The Washington Capitals went out and hired Spencer Carberry as their head coach. Okay, that kind of tells me that they understand where things could be headed with that team. Mm-hmm. At some point, it's going to be a young team. There could be a retool or a rebuild down the horizon, and they're going to see how things play out. Now, Columbus decided to bring in veteran head coach, give him a 2-year deal. They have some good players there. They've brought in some players. They brought in Provorov. They brought in Severson. We had a talk with Aaron Portzline during one of the Leaf broadcasts where he said, attendance at the games and season ticket holders never been better there. They need to capitalize on that by having a good team. It's different in a market like that. So they need to be not near the bottom of the standings. I don't think they need to be a playoff team, but they need to be close. They need to be competitive because if they are a last place team again, the gap is going to be way too big in year 2 of Babcock's contract for them to kind of push towards a playoff spot. So they need to be closing the gap this year. I think there's pressure for them to be, well above 500.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you bring in Babcock, the expectations change. Kind of like Sean Payton with going to Denver. Like, you can say what you want about him. He's got his history. He's won his cups. He's won his gold medals. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame someday. The expectations are there that Babcock can turn things around. They signed Johnny Gaudreau. They have some kids coming. I agree with you. I'm going to stay in the Midwest, and I'm actually going to circle back to where we started. I will take with my 5th and final pick of the pressure draft the Chicago Blackhawks because of the golden child that has now arrived. You have the golden ticket. You've got Bedard. You need to protect him. There is pressure to make sure that you are not a complete debacle. You've got to start turning things around. They are not going to be a playoff team. They are nowhere close to being a playoff team. But if you finish with 54 points, then Bedard might be looking at that and realizing you're years away. You have an opportunity at making noise because you have them. But I think really the pressure is on Chicago to protect him, to prop him up, to make sure he's playing with guys who are going to show him the ropes. Make sure the coaching staff is handling him properly, making sure you're not running him into the ground, but making sure that he uses this year, that is probably going to be a write-off in terms of the standings, but to learn the ropes of the NHL and understand what it means to be the face of a franchise, a superstar, and allow him to have the vision through a full season of what it's going to look like to drag them out of the darkness that they're currently in.
You know what they shouldn't be? The era of the Oilers where it was first overall pick over first overall pick.
Yeah, you don't want overall pick again.
And guys just getting torched and, getting hung out to dry in games and having to answer for it and no support around him. You're 100% right. Like, that kid needs to be brought up in an environment where he can learn, he can get better, but it needs to be somewhat competitive as well.
Yep.
And you need some help.
There it is.
I like it.
The pressure draft. I think it was actually one hell of a draft. And we might have to revisit this again. This is probably worthy of revisiting at some point.
I like it.
I think you can, because pressure is constant, right? But there are ebbs and flows. TSN 1050 once again delivering backpacks filled with school supplies to support local families. It's all part of our 9th annual Back to School Backpacks event happening Wednesday, August 23rd. This year's event is presented by Healthy Planet, together in partnership with the Children's Breakfast Clubs. 1,010 young students will receive the tools they need to succeed before the school bell rings in September. For all the details, head to tsn1050.ca. tsn1050.ca. Get back to our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Take a look at the BMW leaderboard. Jays Reds tomorrow night. We'll start teeing that up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Cardinals-Mets tonight in St. Louis. The Cardinals are getting plus money against New York. That's all I need to hear. I know the Cardinals are not any good. Wainwright is, yes, what do you have?
I was just going to say Wainwright has been awful.
He's been terrible.
Absolutely awful.
He's been awful.
The Mets are terrible too, but they could absolutely tee off on him.
They have a triple-A lineup right now, Grappler. Like, I hear what you're saying, but Wainwright, what has he got, like an 8+ ERA? It's terrible. It's the Mets on the road as favorites. I can't do it. Like, you give me plus money at home against the Mets. If they were playing at Christie Pitts against the Maple Leafs, I would take the Leafs. So Cardinals, money line. Under the number, Dodgers-Brewers tonight. Corbin Burns up against Lance Lynn. And I'm riding the Elks. I'm riding the train.
You're doing it.
I'm taking the points. I'm not suggesting that they necessarily win tonight. The Ticats are not a great team. I saw, I think, 5 of the last 6 times these teams met, Edmonton, Hamilton, it was decided in the final 3 minutes. I'm anticipating a close game, possibly a field goal game tonight. If so, it's 5.5 points. I will take the Elks.
I'll be watching this one with intrigue.
Give me the points.
Just win a game.
I'm riding the train, the Elks.
Here we go.
Bandwagon. I'm on
Elks, baby.
That parlay pays plus 636. That's good plus money. Today's best bet's powered by FanDuel. Bet on star players to score, assist, or have a shot on goal in a soccer same-game parlay. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 plus and physically located in Ontario. All right, Frankie, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
As always, great seeing you. Frankie Corrado. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes, everyone for tuning in today, radio, TV, podcast, web. We appreciate it. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.